Dallas Herman Sorrells was born in the small town of Kahlotus, Washington, on May 19, 1919. Born to Herman and Lena Sorrells, Dallas was the third of 4 children. Dallas's early years in Kahlotus are not well documented, as there are very few sources from this time in his life. Dallas only spent some of his childhood years in Kahlotus before the Sorrells family moved eastward to Pullman, as Herman found work at Washington State College. In Pullman, Dallas adjusted well and began to emerge in the historical record. As he grew older, Sorrells began attending Pullman High School in 1935. Dallas proved to be a popular student, and by his senior year, he was elected as the student body president. In June 1939, Sorrells graduated from Pullman High School and looked to continue his education. Not having to look far for school, Dallas stayed in Pullman and enrolled at Washington State College following his graduation. Despite being a popular student at Pullman High, Dallas's college career is surprisingly scant when it comes to sources. During his years in college, there are no mentions of him joining a fraternity and no references in the student newspaper or even the yearbook. Dallas likely chose instead to focus on his studies rather than chasing the social scene, as he studied sociology during his years at WSC. Nevertheless, Dallas likely met his future wife, Velma Martin, at Washington State College, showing that Dallas was relatively sociable. Dallas's life stayed steady until the middle of his junior year, as the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941 catapulted the United States into World War II. After finishing his junior year in the spring of 1942, Sorrells was listed in a draft contingent of Whitman County men published in the Spokesman-Review newspaper on June 25th. Dallas did not wait to be drafted, and instead enlisted into the U.S. Army to fight for his country. Though the exact date of his enlistment is unknown, where the Army took Dallas is better documented. He was initially sent to Camp Robertson, California for infantry training. Dallas clearly demonstrated a talent for leadership, as he was later sent to Fort Benning, Georgia for officers training. In February 1943, Sorrells completed his officers training and officially became a commissioned officer. With time in between assignments, he traveled back to Pullman, where he proposed to Velma Martin. Despite being engaged, Dallas did not remain in Pullman for very long, as he was soon sent to Camp Rucker, Alabama, before being sent to the Arizona Desert Training Center near Phoenix, Arizona, in June. Using some leave time, Dallas returned to Pullman and married Velma on August 6, 1943, at Pullman's First Church of the Nazarene. The newlyweds enjoyed a brief stay in Pullman before the two were sent to Arizona for only a few months. Dallas was later shipped off once more to San Luis Obispo, California, in November 1943. This was the last of his transfers, as Dallas received notice that he was going to be deployed overseas. In February 1944, he was attached to the 7th Infantry Division and sent to the Pacific Theater.
The 7 straight and a 7 down. Black on red, the shoulder patch of the 7th Infantry Division. My outfit. They call us the Hourglass Division. You can see why. There's something else about an hourglass that fits the 7th. It's got sand in it. They say a guy with fighting guts has sand in his craw. The 7th has sand in its craw, all right. We proved that for certain.
The unit that Sorrells joined was one that had already been battle-tested. The 7th Infantry Division first saw action in the freezing battlefields of the Alaskan Aleutian Islands campaign, from May to August 1943. After battling the Japanese on Attu and taking Kiska with no resistance, the 7th was later sent to the South Pacific, where it took part in battles for the small island atolls of Kwajalein and Enewetak during January and February 1944. Dallas likely did not see combat on these small islands, and probably joined the unit once they had returned to Hawaii in the lead-up for future campaigns later on in 1944. In September, Dallas and the 7th Division left Hawaii in preparation for the liberation of the Philippines. The unit landed on the island of Leyte on October 20th and engaged the Japanese in heavy fighting. Combat took place across jungles and mountainous terrain as American forces pushed back the Japanese. The U.S. suffered light casualties as Japanese resistance on Leyte was soon broken. Though many Japanese troops still remained on other Philippine islands, the campaign on Leyte was successful. Dallas and the rest of the 7th Infantry Division fought in combat until February 1945, when the unit was given time to rest and prepare for another massive invasion. This time, U.S. military planners set their sights on the island of Okinawa. The invasion of Okinawa was the final battle of the U.S. island-hopping campaign, and American soldiers prepared themselves for their toughest fight yet. Japanese resistance had grown increasingly determined as U.S. forces drew closer to Japan. The recent battle on Iwo Jima in February 1945 resulted in thousands of American casualties, and with Okinawa being considered one of the Japanese home islands, servicemen expected an even more deadly struggle. On April 1, 1945, American soldiers stormed the beaches of Okinawa, but were greeted by silence and no resistance. As the troops headed down the southern half of the island, they were opposed by heavily fortified Japanese entrenchments. Sorrells, now a first lieutenant, quickly distinguished himself in the savage fighting that took place all around him. In May, he was awarded a Bronze Star for Meritorious Achievement in Action, an honor that was presented by Major General A.V. Arnold. Though American forces slowly advanced during the first couple of months of battle, monsoon rains at the end of May turned the battlefields across Okinawa into a muddy disaster that bogged down all movement. Though Sorrells displayed bravery in combat, his courage would not be able to protect him as the battle dragged on. On June 5th, Sorrells was seriously injured in combat. He succumbed to his wounds 3 days later, on June 8, 1945. 2 weeks later, American forces finally captured the island of Okinawa. Dallas Sorrells was 26 years old at the time of his death. His body was initially buried at the 7th Infantry Cemetery on Okinawa. His body was later moved to the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific in Honolulu, Hawaii, on March 8, 1949. Years later, his name was listed on the WSU Veterans Memorial in Pullman, joining the many other WSC veterans who fell during World War II.